Good afternoon once again. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Gregorian. I'm the president and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club. Welcome to today's meeting. It happens to be a big birthday for the DEC, 90 years of incredible speakers and networking. And that tradition continues today. I especially want to welcome our DEC members. If you're not a DEC member yet, give me 10 seconds to convince you. Your next job, prospect, client, maybe even best friend is right here in this room. We'd love to have you join. You can do so at econclub.org. In fact, if you want to do so today on your way out, upstairs in the lobby, stop by registration. We'll give you a free event ticket to be used between now and the month of June. As we get started, I would just ask you to silence your cell phones so we do not disturb today's program. And if you've been with us before, you know we always begin with a pledge and a prayer. So I invite you to stand and join me as we honor our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And kindly remain standing as our invocation today will be delivered by the Reverend Dr. William Danaher from Christ Church, Cranbrook.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be using an old prayer from the 19th century, and I'm going to invite you to listen as I read it to what we still talk about and what we don't talk about, because I think there's a hint here as to what we need to talk about. So in my tradition, I say, the Lord be with you. You say it also with you. And I say, let us pray. And then I pray, and then I say, amen. You ready? The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Grant, O God, that your holy and life-giving Spirit may so move every human heart, and especially the hearts of the people of these United States, that barriers which divide us may crumble, suspicions disappear, and hatred cease, that our divisions being healed, we may live in justice and peace. Give your Spirit to the leaders of our land, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to other nations of the earth. To the President and members of the Cabinet, to governors of states, mayors of cities, and to all in administrative authority, grant wisdom and grace and the exercise of their duties. To senators and representatives and those who make our laws in states, cities, and towns, give courage, wisdom, and foresight to provide for the needs of all our people and to fulfill our obligations to the community of nations. To the judges and officers of our courts, give understanding and integrity, that human rights may be safeguarded and justice served. And finally, teach our people to rely on your strength and to accept their responsibilities to their fellow citizens, that they may elect trustworthy leaders and make wise decisions for the well-being of our society, that we may serve you faithfully in our generation and honor your holy name. For yours is the kingdom, O Lord, and you are exalted as head above all. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Touche. Direct hit. Nice job. Thank you. Special thank you to Detroit Public Television and Lawrence Technological University for live streaming today's meeting. And thanks to WJR, who's doing their focus show live from right outside the doors here. We invite you to stop in and see them for the final half hour of their program after our program is concluded. We've got students here today, as we do always, courtesy of our generous corporate sponsors. Their morning already included a terrific private receptions with the Senator. I want to tell you who's with us today. Please hold the applause. Chelsea High School came all the way from Chelsea, of course. Compliments of Gardner White Furniture. And River Rouge High School, thanks to an anonymous donor, please take a moment and let's welcome the students and thank our sponsors. On your tables, our season lineup. We continue to load our lineup up. We've got something for everybody. The Red Wings, what a game last night. They're rocketing towards a playoff spot, and they'll be with us this Wednesday. Got a couple tickets left for that. If you can make that, we'd love to see you out there. We did have to move our March meeting with Barbara McQuaid and Jocelyn Benson to April 23rd, so please note that on your schedule. Tons more to come, so be sure to check your email and check our website. Also on your table is our sponsors. I want to take a moment to thank them profusely. We would not be here if it wasn't for their generosity. So thank you a million times. I mentioned 90 years. In 90 years of history, those speakers tell the history of our country. And Senator Manchin, you now just joined a distinguished list of 13 others who were on our stage on February 26th. A couple of highlights. 1945 U.S. Treasury Secretary Henry Morgenthau, who played a key role in designing the New Deal. 1973, maybe a little infamous, John Ehrlichman, you might remember from his Watergate fame. 1979, interesting, Alfred Kahn, not the architect Alfred Kahn, but he was an American economist known in the 1970s as a father of airline deregulation. And what I thought was particularly interesting was his speech to the DEC that day. The title was, Inflation, What Can We Do About It? So, 45 years later, and here we are today, and that same question on everybody's mind. So, today we're pleased to add you, Senator Manchin, as our 14th speaker on this day in DEC history. Congratulations, and thanks for being with us. And finally, we invite you to use your smartphone, and you can be involved in today's program. Lots of pictures you can share with your social media using Econ Club, and you could submit a question for Senator Manchin using the QR code you see on your table. Those questions will make their way to our presiding officer, who I'm about to put to work. Dr. Tarek Soap is the president of Lawrence Technological University. He is a DEC board member, an amazing supporter of our organization and me personally, and man, oh man, does he have LTU rockin' and rollin'. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Tarek Soap.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon to all of our DEC members and guests. I'm honored to be invited to act as the presiding officer over today's important event. First of all, I would like to start by taking a moment to applaud all of the work that the DEC does to provide a platform for these critical discussions. In my role as president of Lawrence Tech, I understand the importance of creating a community of stakeholders across a wide array of sectors to debate and explore the issues that face us all today. So let us please give a loud round of applause to the DEC and the leadership for all of their amazing efforts. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker. But first, I would like to tell you a little about our moderator. Mr. Roop Raj is a familiar face to all of us. Roop is the evening anchor on Fox 2 Detroit newscast and host of Let It Rip. His career started at age 14 when he produced and hosted his own television program, something that helped him in his first 2 years at Michigan State University, where he was on air at Lansing's CBS and ABC stations. Having worked in both Flint and New Orleans, Roop moved back to Detroit in 2009, and we are honored to have him moderate today's session. On a side note, Roop is an adjunct at Lawrence Tech University and was an adjunct, so I love him very much, of course, for that. Now, on to today's esteemed guest. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin was sworn into the U.S. Senate in late 2010 to fill the seat left vacant by the late Senator Robert Byrd. Grandchild of an Italian immigrant and small business owner, Senator Manchin was born into a family that promoted the values of hard work, community, common sense, and fairness, something he always stayed true to. As he has done throughout his career, first as a state legislator, then governor, and now senator, he remains committed to working collaboratively with both Republicans and Democrats to find common sense solutions to the problems facing our country, working hard to usher in a new bipartisan spirit in the Senate and the House. Senator Manchin currently serves as the chair of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and also serves as a member on the Senate Committee on Appropriations, the Senate Committee on Armed Services, and the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. An avid pilot, outdoorsman, hunter, angler, and motorcyclist, the senator is currently on a listening tour across the Midwest, and we are truly honored that he included the Detroit Economic Club in his tour. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm Detroit Economic Club welcome for Senator Manchin and Roop Raj.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow. What a great group, and what a time to be alive. Sometimes
Always
good, sometimes bad.
Always a good time to be alive.
Always good to be on. That's a good point. What a time to be alive, though. Senator Manchin, you've been in politics for many years. You came from the private sector.
Yeah.
You landed today on your listening tour in Detroit, the Motor City, where things are made, people dream of things, and they make it happen, whether it be good music or great cars. I want to ask you, and I want to take us all back 11 years in July. It was 2013, a guy named Warren Buffett showed up to Detroit on the eve of Detroit's bankruptcy and told a group similar to this that I would vote for Detroit and not against it any time. And anybody who votes against Detroit doesn't know what they're talking about, because over the course of history, Detroit has shown us what resilience and resurgence looks like. As you kind of descend on Detroit as a U.S. Senator, what are your reflections on what this city, this state, and where we are right now can teach the rest of the country?
First of all, Detroit pretty much defined who I was as a young person. I love cars, and I love music, Motown. So it kind of set me on my path, if you will. And you always look for things to come from here. It's innovation, technology, whether it's the automobile, and everything that comes from that, and all the industries that came in manufacturing that basically supplied that. And then when it started going down, I knew about the industry when I was 13 years old. I was a Boy Scout, and the mines were closing down. They were starting to mechanize the mines. And my Boy Scout leader, Pat, was one of the best Boy Scout leaders a person could ever have. And all of a sudden, he lost his job in the mine, and he had to move. He went to Lordstown, Ohio first, and he came to Detroit. So I knew about the migration from all the opportunities that were up here and everything. So I've seen that. And like you said, you never bet against an area that has that lineage, because it's still there. It's in the DNA of the people that are still here. It's in their children and grandchildren. So if you're looking for an area to come, that people have the ability to think, to work, to be, articulate, if you will, you're going to come to where that type of lineage is.
You're a business guy, and you went into politics, and what's interesting about your story is if you look at so many politicians, including former President Trump, Governor Snyder, the former governor of Michigan, business guys who went into politics. Would you call yourself a career politician?
Not at all. Never thought like one. Never wanted to be one. And
Are you one now?
I hope not. When I was 35, okay, so my family had always been in. I come from a little town, Farmington. It's 400 people on a good day, and my first little idea of politics was I was 10 years old. My dad ran for mayor. He had a little furniture store. My grandfather had a little grocery store, and so they were in business there. And all the kids, we all had to work, and I never got paid, but we had to work. So, but we had good parents who loved us dearly, so that was pay enough, I think. Anyway, my dad ran for mayor and he got elected. So when he was running, I went door to door. I thought, well, boy, I'm going to ask everybody to vote for my dad. And they did. And we never had a stoplight in the town. Never forget this. Never had a stop. We had 2 caution lights. And my dad thought we should be a town that's growing and showing that you're thinking ahead and progressing. So he put 2 stoplights. We had 2 wrecks the same day. Put 2 stoplights up and we had 2 wrecks the same day.
That's progress, right? Yeah.
Wait a minute. The next day he took them down, put the caution lights back up. So I knew you had to be flexible in politics. You have to meet the demand of the people. What I learned in retail sales was a customer, the value of a customer. What I didn't see in the political arena was anyone who thought government was going to give you good service. So I brought what we call retail government. So when I got involved, I always wanted to make sure that I knew my constituents. I wanted to give them the best service. I wanted them to know where to send their friends if they needed help. And we've tried to do that. Since I was been in the House of Delegates, I've been in the State Senate, I've been Secretary of State, I've been governor 2 terms, and now I've been in the Senate. And the Senate has been at times the most fulfilling job in the world, and at times the most frustrating and unfulfilling jobs. I've never had anything like it in my life, but anyway.
What's the most unfulfilling part right now? And by the way, we should mention, if you haven't checked the headlines, he's not running again. You've decided not to.
Right, I'm not.
So I want to ask you, first of all, is it because it's not fulfilling?
No, I think his time's up. I mean, I think there should be term limits. I never believed in term limits before.
Got some people who agree with you.
And Paul out there, he asked me, he said, well, I might just, I said, well, Paul, let me tell you this. I was about 15 years ago, I was in southern West Virginia giving a town hall. And a lady in the back, she's a beautiful lady, she says, Joe, I really want you to be for term limits. And I said, well, let me tell you why I haven't been there and why I don't agree on term limits. And I gave her all the reasons that you lose good people, you lose people with experience, and that's hard to replace. And she says, well, just think of it this way, Joe. If there were term limits, maybe we get 1 good term out of you. I couldn't argue with that. I could not argue with that because I've seen people that basically right now they're afraid if they don't do what they're getting pushed to do, you're going to be primaried. Whether it be a D or an R, the extreme's going to primary you because you're not extreme enough.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because you're the centrist Democrat. You lean a little bit more conservative in many of your views. No secret there. That's not. When you talk about term limits, I think right now, as you say that, I'm thinking to myself, our current president wouldn't be the president if we had term limits when he was senator for him to get the ascent and his role in his roadway to the White House. Do you think Joe Biden's too old for his current job?
Well, he's not that much older than me.
But do you think he's too old? You know, it's funny because my dad is 77. I know you're
I'm
right about
76.
there. And I had coffee with my dad yesterday, and he's a retired GM guy, and he said to me, I can't believe we have 2 guys running for office. My dad's a Republican who is wondering what to do now because he's, all these things. But he said, I was talking about you, and he says, He says, well, Joe Manchin, he's a young guy. I said, Dad, he's younger than you. He's like, point is, he's younger than me. He said, you're a young guy compared to my dad.
Well, I'm the youngest one in the crowd right now, I can tell you, with who's out there running.
But my question is, when you look at the situation as it stands right now, you have Republicans and you have Democrats who are going, these are the 2 guys we're left with? I mean, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with our political system when this is what we're left with?
Let me give it to you this way. Usually you get about 10 million people that vote in both the Democratic and Republican national primary. About 10. Could be 10 and a half, 11. But let's say 20 million. 10 million D, 10 million R, okay? About 150 million of us will vote in the general election, on average. So you've got a very small percentage with a business model that's giving you very little options. Now, I look at all of us, we're consumers, especially all the women. You have a gene that we don't even know where it comes from. Men don't know where your gene of shopping comes from. But you can shop and pick out the best buy or the best product better than anybody I know. My mother, my grandmother, my sisters, my wife, and my daughters are perfect at this. So you don't have much options to pick from. And people are getting frustrated with that because we don't have an open system. And the system was designed probably after the European system. We didn't want to go down the parliament where you might have an election every year or 2 elections in 1 year because of not building a coalition. So I've looked at it so many different ways. My goal was to build a third party, viable, centrist party to where my good friends in the grand old party wanted to be grand again, but they're not letting them. And my good friends in the responsible Democrat Party that were compassionate but very responsible and fiscally responsible, they have nowhere to go. but they're forced. And if we can give them a viable option, it could be a lot different, and you won't have the extremes running basically the both party system. It's a business model, and it plays well in Washington. That business model does not play well in Detroit or in other parts of the world or in this country.
But you've said over and over again to your constituents in West Virginia and to the United States, the whole country, you've said, most of this country are not extreme rights and extreme lefts. They're people who just want to get things done.
Right.
If that's true, why are we electing people who are only extreme left and extreme right in many cases?
Well, if you're given an option that's very limited, then you might make the best of the worst decision because you have another option. You don't participate. I've always participated in elections. I thought it was my responsibility, my duty, and it was my honor, and I took it seriously. And now we've got people, and we got our students I spoke to earlier. You know, are they going to be attracted when they watch what happens? This is not normal. What you're seeing is not normal. This is not how real people in real parts of America act. Their towns don't survive if they act like this. But in Washington, they can do it and get by with it because it's a business model and a lot of money comes in. The only thing that keeps us in the model that works well in the business, there's no need for them to change. The Democratic Party is not going to change. The Republican Party is not going to change because they're going to make you pick a side. I'm a lot better than that side. And they'll tell you how bad this side. They won't tell you how good they are on everything they want to do for you. They just want to make sure that they ostracize the other side so you'll get more involved and say, oh, yes, I'm for you. I don't like that person at all.
So then what happens when you have someone who's a disruptor, like former President Donald Trump, who's running again and at a town hall just a few days ago said exactly what you're saying? He basically was mimicking and echoing what you're saying, which is that Americans are sick of career politicians and they're sick of extreme left and extreme right. They want someone who can get things done, and he says he's the guy who can get it done. We saw one President Trump in that town hall where he was kind and collected and had his wits about him and was smart with what he said. Then we see him at a rally where he's ripping on people. Which Donald Trump and who's voting for who?
Well, I've served with both. I've served with Donald Trump and I served with Joe Biden. I've known Joe Biden longer because of his political affiliation for many years. And I've known Donald Trump just by the time he was there. I met him, and I was the only Democrat that he would invite over to sit down and talk about things. And he didn't have a concept of how was working. He had good people around him, but then they all left. So the only thing about President Trump is, he's a real unusual person. I'll give you a perfect example. He can't stand not making a correct decision, or he thinks everything he says is what you should do. So in 2018, I'm running in a state that's an R40. Any of you in politics, an R40 state. It doesn't get any more than that. And no one has ever won an election coming from a state that is an R40 or a D40 if you're the other side. Well, I have a D by my name, and I'm running in a Republican state of West Virginia, R40. That means Republicans win by 40 points. He says, hey, Joe, he says, I like you. You're my friend. I'm not going to campaign against you. I knew he couldn't hold because I knew that Mitch McConnell and the Republican National Committee says, you understand, in West Virginia, Donald Duck as a Republican should win. That's pretty much evaluation pretty good. And so he said, I'm not going to run against you. Well, I knew that wouldn't happen. So the campaign goes on. He comes to my state 6 times against me. They spend $25 million in my little state. The week after election, he says, come over and have lunch with me. I'm thinking, what in the heck am I going to say to go? He just came to my state 6 times, spent $25 million to beat me. And I walked through the door, and there's a picture on my wall, and it has him sitting in the Oval Office, President Trump. It has Ivanka and Mike Pence standing laughing. They're all laughing. I walked through the door. He said, told you we couldn't beat him. Told you we couldn't beat him. Now, he didn't want to take blame for not beating me, okay? That was the whole moral of that story. So I looked at him and I said, well, hell, it wasn't for lack of trying.
All right.
You know what he said? Oh, Joe, you know I didn't want to beat you. And I says, oh, Mr. President, I knew you weren't serious. If you were serious, you'd have came 12 times and spent $50 million.
All right, so when you look at...
That's what I'm dealing with.
So we're all dealing with these two choices, and I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into this. Former President Trump has talked a heavy game about some things that he'd like to do when he comes back because he's, quite frankly, angry. People are calling this what could be a vendetta tour if he gets back in. Are you worried about that for the sake of this
Absolutely.
country?
One thing about it, Donald Trump tells you what he's going to do and who he is, believe him. He'll do exactly what he's telling you. So when a person tells me something and I think it's absolutely wrong for the country, I'm going to believe him and not go that direction. And I've been very upfront with a lot of my Republican friends. I says, first time I've ever heard you're going to use a vengeful approach to how you're going to administer and run. That means anyone's not on your list, you follow me? Anyone that might have been your opposition. And then the rule of law is only for everybody but him. And the only fair election is the one he wins. That's not the way the system works. And
In terms of the vendetta piece, Trump does it like nobody else, but is it safe to say that that's just politics as usual? Because when President Obama came in, he's reversing things that were done before him that Bush did. Bush reversed what had been done before him.
reversing is one thing, but when he says the people that, that have spoken out and been very difficult for him, and he's taken a very, I hope not, but he's told us they would be very vengeful and vindictive. And when a person tells you they want to be a dictator for one day, I've never in history found the first dictator only stayed one day. I've never found that.
It's usually a long-term position that you're feeling. President Joe Biden, what's your relationship
We have
with
a good
him?
relationship, we just don't agree, okay, on certain things. He's gone too far left, and I told him that. He's not the Joe Biden I've known. Not the Joe Biden that ran in 2020 that told you he's going to come from the middle.
What does he tell you when you tell him that?
No.
Does he agree? Does he see why you see
says,
that?
well, but one time we talked, he said, Joe, he says, they tell me I have the most diverse cabinet and the diverse members of my staff than any other presidency. I said, sir, we're not talking about diversity. We're talking about real BS, crazy to the left. I know these people. I said, you can't govern from the left. You just can't. You can't govern from the right. And right now, we're not getting much governing done. That's the problem. The 117th Congress, which was 20 when he first got elected, it will go down as one of the most historical, productive Congresses in history. The 118th we're in right now will go down as absolutely the least performing, worst Congress we've ever had in the history of the United States. How did that happen? And my Republican friends are just tied in knots.
You say
We have Rob Portmans of the world leaving and people retiring and Roy Blunt and all these people we worked. It makes it very difficult.
You say that you don't govern with ideology, you govern with what people need, the human effect. You've always said that. I want to ask you what that looks like as we move forward. Who out there can make up a mind about who it is that they're going to vote for here based on that? Are there people out there who are still doing the work that you do because of the right reasons?
Yeah, but I would tell you this, the character of the person you send to represent you, this is a democracy, and it's a representative form of democracy. We're a republic, and a republic definition is that we own it, the people own it. But some people, different republics pick different way they're going to govern. We're a representative form of government, so it means it represents who you are, the person you send. Well, the character of that person means all the things that I can tell you what they're going to end up doing. And if a person, I've always said this, in West Virginia, come from a little rural area, 400 people, I told you before, but they're beautiful people, and I said they can shake your hand, look in your eye, and see your soul. It's just that's all they got, their gut. That's what they've always lived off of. And they can tell, and you can tell. I think it's inherent, innate in all of us. Give us the people that have that type of character, and I'll guarantee you'll get good results. But what happens is, and I never knew, my poll ratings were always pretty good as governor. Pretty high in the 70s, and that, which is tremendous in today's world. And the day that I mentioned that I was going to take run for Bob Byrd, he died. I wanted to stay and finish my last 2 years of my second term. I had to make a decision. I made the decision. I said, well, I can go help now because we did good in our state. Maybe we can take and help there. As soon as I said that, I lost 20 points in one weekend. Just because I said I'm going to Washington. I didn't do anything different. I'm still the same person. From a Friday to a Monday, I went from a 70 rating down to 50. I said,
what did that tell you?
It told me they hated Washington. It told me they were scared to death that now I couldn't be the old Joe from West Virginia. I'll be Washington Joe now. And that's how the other side starts playing it, because they want to beat you. And they make you think you'll never have this person back. They don't look at me in West Virginia as Joe's a Democrat from West Virginia or whatever. They just look at Joe from West Virginia. And that race in 2010 was very, very tight. And I couldn't believe it. And I got the last 2 weeks of the race. And I didn't know what to do. So I was in the woods, and I said, I'm going to go out and take my gun out and maybe go around, walk around the woods for a while. I came back out of the woods and he says, we got an idea. Let's shoot something. I said, I'm all for that. So we were going to shoot basically a cap and trade bill because I thought it was wrong and I thought there's a better way to build the energy that we need and also meet the climate needs. We did that and we shot it with a shotgun, didn't do any good, and I shot it with a rifle. And my points went up in 1 week, 10 points. I won by 11 or 12 points, okay? Someone says, well, how do you explain that? And I says, they figured that's the same old Joe we had. I didn't change. So when I tell you, when people talk to you all in the audience, and every person, they said, how did you take the pressure when I was 50-50? It was my vote to basically stop Joe Biden from doing a lot of things, and we helped do a lot of good things because we had 5 Ds and 5 Rs in our bipartisan group. And we were looking, and we had so much power then because if we wanted to do something, use it for the good, and we did. And people said, how'd you take the pressure? I said, I didn't feel any pressure at all. You feel pressures when you try to change your approach and your conversation, your dialogue, or your message by trying to play to the crowd. Be who you are and what you are, and let the crowd decide if that's what you like or not. You know, I'm not going to make all the decisions you'd want me to make, but I'm going to give you a purpose and a reason how I made mine in the thought process.
Are there other people who think like you right now that you work with, or do you feel like you're kind of a lone guy on an island?
I've never been afraid of losing. So I'm a free bird. I've never been afraid of losing because I never thought this was the best job. As a matter of fact, this is one of my least best jobs I've ever had, being a United States Senator. And
But are there other guys and gals like you
I
in
think so,
Washington?
but they left.
They're gone. All right, let's talk about...
They took off quicker than I did. They were smarter, maybe. I don't know.
I want to talk about this election that we have coming up.
There's still good people there.
No, I'm
Very good
sure
people.
there are. We have Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and others
Debbie's
who
a
you've
dear
talked
friend.
about. I know
Debbie
you're
and
a
John,
friend
the
of her.
best of the best.
And John, this election, we are 9 months away. A lot can happen, as we know, just in human life in 9 months. Are we going to birth a new candidate here for the Democrats? I mean, is that what's going to happen? Because here's the deal. You have many, many Democrats who believed in Joe Biden when he ran the first time. And the problem with social media, I think, is that they never air the whole thing of anything. It's always pieces. When you air a piece of Joe Biden the president looking confused, walking off of a stage, which exit to take and all of that, that's being put out there, and people are thinking that maybe this guy can't put 2 sentences together. You know,
Well, I was going to say this. I met with both when Trump was there and met with Joe Biden. I never had a problem at all when I sat down working with him, talking to him about different things, coming away said, I don't think they understood what I said. I never had that problem.
There's no cognitive issue with both of them.
I never saw it, and I've been with both, and I've never saw that. Now, when you're out there and people are throwing things at you, sometimes things start spinning a little bit, which way and this and that, and how you're going to answer that, and what the clarity might be, and people can question that.
And age is a factor. I mean, people get a little bit slowed down, right?
Yeah, sometimes we try to talk too fast.
So what do you do with...
Or don't remember what the hell we were saying. One of the two, I'm not sure.
What do you do with this electorate moving forward? Because the people who are voting are sitting back going, okay, I wish I had someone else in this column. Is it possible in your mind that President Biden gets switched out come August in a few months?
People talk about that. We were just talking about that, and people believe that could happen. If it does, it'll be in a brokered convention. And Super Tuesday pretty much will identify what you have offered to you. The only thing that changes from Super Tuesday, and I think August it'll be about the last time you can do anything whatsoever in any type of primary. So that'll all be pretty much sorted out in a convention.
But it's possible in your mind.
There's always a possibility in either side. There's a lot that can happen. You know, you got President Trump with an awful lot of legal problems on his hands, and you got people that maybe have concerns on President Biden. I just want to see people come back together. The Democrats is not your enemy if you're a Republican. The Republican is not your enemy if you're a Democrat. I can tell you where the enemies of our country are, and they're not in our country, and they should not be. And we shouldn't let that be fostered to the point to where, oh yeah, that's your enemy, you know, and this spewing this hatred, this horrible dialect, and talking about people and calling them names. I mean, I've never seen that, and I just don't adhere to that whatsoever, and I don't stand for it.
Let's talk about the future when it comes to certain legislation. You're sitting in the Motor City right now. When I first met you in the reception room, we joked about the electric car situation about the fact that I have an electric car, and someone took my keys by mistake, and I said they're not going to get far because there's only 130 miles left on it. So, but the joke is, I said, look, I said, Senator Manchin, whenever you get an electric car, people think you're virtue signaling, walking around going, everyone should get an electric car. I don't believe anyone should. If you don't want one, you shouldn't get one. My wife has a gas car, but you and I are talking, and I wanted to ask you on stage and save it for here. Did this administration push it way too fast, way too far, way too soon?
Oh, absolutely. And I was, you know, I'm chairman of the Energy Committee, so I've done a lot of the energy bills. We're producing more energy today than we've ever produced in the history of the United States of America. You've never heard President Biden say that. We're producing more oil, more gas, more coal than ever before because the world's demanding it, and we're doing it cleaner than any place else in the world. So we're helping the emissions because this is going to be consumed. And we're investing more in clean technology than ever before. So it's a balance in the IRA bill. And everyone says, why isn't he getting credit for the inflation being at 3%, unemployment being down? Because they don't talk about it. They don't talk about what really happened because it wasn't something that they believed in. We did that from the committee and pushed it out, and that was a deal we made. We're going to be energy independent and help our allies around the world. So when you see what's going on, it makes no sense at all that people basically are fighting this and stop this, and you can't use this and you can't use that. I said, let me make sure I understand. You want to put charging stations. At one time, they want to build $80 billion to put charging stations all over America. I says, my history, as I recall, when Henry Ford and the Model T was invented here with assembly line, I don't think the United States government built filling stations. I just don't think. I think that was a entrepreneurial spirit, capitalist mentality. And I said, that didn't make any sense at all. And I says, now this is the first time that you're going down a path that we're going to be dependent for our mode of transportation. First time. The United States of America has never had to depend on another country to build an automobile, a train, a plane, or anything in between. We've been able to do it ourselves. Now we're going to be totally reliable on China for the energy portion of this vehicle. You're crazy. You think I says, I'm old enough to remember waiting in line in 1974 with the oil embargo to buy gas. I'm sure as heck not going to wait in line to buy a battery.
What about Governor Whitmer inviting battery companies to locate here in Michigan and build the infrastructure so we have it?
That's because with the IRA bill, we put the incentives in that. But the only thing about it, they're trying to accelerate what we put in there. Let me tell you why you got so much debt. I think it's 34.3 trillion today. This is not sustainable. For the Gen Zers out there, God bless you all, but I can tell you, if we don't get this debt under control, you will not live any type of a quality of life that you would like to live or what you've been accustomed to, because the debt will cripple you. And debt will take this nation down before anything else. It won't be a Ford nation. It'll be the debt of the nation that takes us down. And it's taken down every empire in history. That's what's going to happen, and no one's taking it serious. Myself and Mitt Romney have been working on Fiscal Responsibility Act. Get our finances back in order. And what they do, we pass a piece of legislation, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, tells you how much it's going to cost. So we say, okay, we have to earn this, we have to make this much money in 10 years. What they're not telling you, when they do about the money, they're giving you spending authority for 10 years. If you do something that basically is very, very popular, child tax credit, and we think it's going to cost $1 trillion, we'll use $1 trillion in 3 years, but we'll spend for another 7 and rack up $3 trillion of more debt. That's how you've gotten the debt you've got. That's got to stop, and you have to understand the process of money moving in Washington. So anytime you hit a CBO score, then basically all spending authority should stop immediately and go back and reauthorize to see if people support it. That's what's killing us right now.
But that's not happening.
None of that's happening.
Speaking of spending, and I have 2 more questions, and we're going to get to the audience because they have some important questions. $75 billion in Ukraine authorized and being spent right now. $14 billion for the war for Israel against Hamas, at the cost of close to 30,000 lives in Gaza and thousands more in Israel. Hamas is still around. At what point do we ask ourselves, is this worth it when we have roads and crumbling here in the U.S. and other problems as well?
Well, if you want to, I mean, do you think there's any country in the world that will take the place of the United States of trying to be the leader of the free world, if you will, and trying to be an ally to all the people? The only thing that makes us a superpower is we have other countries around the world that will go with our same values and fight and die with us. If China had that, if Russia had that, we wouldn't be the superpower. Okay, they don't. You want to give that up. First of all, what Ukraine, for us, it's the best investment we've ever made. For us to walk away from Ukraine right now, Europe has put a lot more in it. All right, NATO allies, as far as they're treated with NATO, we have to go to war if one of our NATO allies are attacked. Okay, so if it gets to Poland and the Baltics, and you think he's going to stop there? He wants to put Mother Russia together. He thinks Gorbachev was the worst thing ever happened to Russia. That's who Putin, what he believes. So he wants to put it all back together. He's not stopping. Then it will be American blood. It'll be American men and women shedding their blood, and our treasury. This is a pittance of what we would pay if we get into a war with them. So you have to stop that, and I think Ukraine's been extremely effective and brave at what they've done.
And that price tag doesn't surprise you and doesn't shock you. There's no sticker shock to you.
Well, let me just tell you, first of all, you know, most of this is we're replacing our own arsenal. 80% of that money is being spent in America. We're not sending money over there for them to build weapons. We're building them here. We're giving them our stockpiles that we've had, and we're replacing with all new modern stockpiles. So basically, it's a win-win on both of these situations, and we're building up our ability to defend ourselves.
And the Israel situation.
The Israel situation it's a horrible situation. October 7th is just atrocious what went on, okay? And no one even can imagine that. But on the other hand, is there a better way to target and do that? So people say, first of all, if you don't agree that Hamas is a terrorist organization, it's hard to have a conversation. And if you don't know the definition of terrorism versus civilized countries that have differences and they go to war, okay? When they go to war, they're war machines to protect their people. Terrorist organizations use their people to protect their war machines. That's the difference. So you're dealing with very irrational, and wherever you can wipe out terrorism in the world, you should do it. With that, we have a situation now, Hamas, okay? If Hamas wants a ceasefire, return all of the hostages. You have a better chance of getting a ceasefire, just return the hostages.
Is that going to happen?
Doesn't look like it, but there's still a lot of people are pushing for a ceasefire. Why would you cease fire and basically give them time to reload? How do you think they built these $1 billion worth of tunnels with all of the foreign aid that's come in there to help the people, and the people have been living a miserable life?
I want to end with the question that you're here for, the listening tour. Your daughter is kind of in charge of this one, and you're doing it with her. Talk about what this listening tour is all about and why you're doing it. And is there a chance you'll run for president? Let's throw that in there too.
The listening tour is this. We know there's 55 to 60% of us who put our country before our parties. Forget about the political party, but you're going to be involved. If there's 60% of us, how come we don't have the voice that we should have? Why are people going to the left and the right? Because that's where they think the power is. The power is not. It sits in this room. If you all have lived your life, and most people that have been successful that are here have lived your life in making reasonable, sensible decisions. And most countries that are really prosperous have done sensible things. And here we sit right now, and we're not doing things because politics is ruling the day. And it needs to change. I've come to the conclusion it's not going to change from Washington. So when I talked about term limits, I've said that I believe a Supreme Court should be one 18-year term. I believe a president should be one 6-year term. I believe U.S. Senate should be 2 6-year terms. And I believe that the House or Congress should be 6 2-year terms. And you can move, and people say, well, we're going to get rid of the good people. They can run for another office. They just can't stay in the same place they are until they think they own it. Because the government was never intended to be this.
So would you consider running for president?
Whatever I could do to help my country, but I've already made that decision. I'm going to go out and try to get people and try to recruit the next president, the next congressperson, the next senator sitting back there. I've seen a few of them.
I like it.
They're back
I like
here.
it. There are the young guys and gals in the back.
That's exactly right.
I want to say thank you for being with us. This audience is going to have a chance to ask questions to you
Sure.
as well. But it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I've covered you for years, just from my
Say
seat.
good things or bad things.
Both, but depending on who you talk to. But you know what, though? You're a good man, and that no one can argue with. And I appreciate you stopping by today, being a part of this. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Senator Joe Manchin,
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen. And now we're going to turn things over to the esteemed president of Lawrence Tech. He's going to moderate this next section so that you can ask some of your questions. Thank you, Senator, again.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
So we have a couple of questions
Sure.
from the audience that have been submitted, and also a few questions from our students. Let me start, Senator. First question, where do you get your news from? What do you read or watch on a daily basis?
Well, we talked to some of our students back there, and I says, Gen Z, I can only imagine. We never had this thrown at us. We had 3 basically network news, and that's all we got, ABC, CBS, NBC. So I would tell you today, and I've been on Intel committees, so I watch what we're dealing with in Washington, then I'll check the news to find out where it's coming more accurate so that people can see. When push comes to shove, if you ask me point blank where I would go to try to get unbiased, I'd go NPR or PBS. National Public Radio, Public Broadcasting, or BBC gives you a better worldwide view. They're pretty accurate. They don't seem to want to they don't give you their opinions. They basically put the facts out. All the major newspapers have done a great job. They're picking it up, and I've checked them out. So to our Detroit press, I want to tell you, I watch all the papers, and I get good solid reviews on those. And then the networks, where you got to be careful. The social platforms aren't designed to give you the facts. That's a business model. The cable news is not designed to give you an unbiased opinion. They're going to give you a bias. If it's Fox News, they're going to come one way. If it's NBC, they're going to come another way. They all have their own business model, and they have pretty much the demographics of who they're targeting, and they're going to play to that continuously. The hard thing is when you go home and you go visit your grandparents, and you just say, I can't even have a conversation with my grandma anymore because all she watches MSNBC. Makes no sense at all. Or all they're watching is grandpa's watching Fox. Can't talk to him anymore. And this, they get hung. So I don't know how you move that around, but that's what I would tell you.
Thank you. Next question. Would you support U.S. military action if China invaded Taiwan?
I have a hard time with that one. I'll tell you the reason I do. I would look at that the same as we look at Ukraine. They're not a NATO ally. And we have why do we have a one China policy to where we don't even acknowledge through any type of dealings that we have with China? We won't say it because we don't want to antagonize them, but yet we've said that we're going to go to war and fight for Taiwan. I would like to think we can work it out and give them all the assistance. I think Taiwan is very, very capable technology-wise. If we can give them the assistance they need to protect themselves, we should do that. Putting our boots on the ground would be a hard thing for me to recommend or vote for.
I understand. How do you view the Midwest's role in the U.S. economy?
The what now?
The Midwest.
Well, this is the breadbasket. I mean, there's a lot of things with all you have here, you know. And I know it from the energy. You're in the MISO system here. I think MISO is your delivery. So we're watching that very carefully too. How you get your energy and things of this sort, where you grow, what opportunities you have, and this has been where a lot of the heartland, as far as manufacturing, has come from. With that, you have a DNA of knowing how to build things. So people are going to be looking for that type of a workforce. So I think tremendous opportunities are here in the Midwest. I think in all of the hard-lifting, hard-working states. West Virginia is a heavy-lifting state. And we have opportunities now coming, and you will too.
Excellent. So this question is from one of our students, and it is written all in caps, right? And here is it. Will you please reconsider not running for president? Is that a possibility?
If I thought there was a viable, first of all, the Democratic Party is not going to accept me, nor is the Republican Party. I said, neither one are that crazy about me because they can't control me. It doesn't make sense. I'm not voting for it. All we got to do it for the sake of the party. I'm not here for the sake of any party. I'm here for the United States of America. I take my oath of office to defend and protect the Constitution. I take my constituency basis, who I work for, as the people in West Virginia. But I've always said this: if my country does well, my state will do great. If my state's doing good, that means my country's doing good. And no matter who the president is, I've always taken the position, that's my president. I want him or her to be the best they can. I'm going to contribute the best I can to make him the best, using the experience I've had. There's not a pathway. If there was a pathway, it'd be a whole different story. And I'm not going to be a spoiler. I'm not going to say, oh, well, Joe Manchin jumped in there, but he knew it was a very long shot, and he really threw the race to either one or the other. I don't want to be that spoiler.
Thank you. Now we move to the fun part of this, the lightning round.
Well, lightning round. Here we go.
Okay. Something on your bucket list.
Riding on my motorcycle across the United States. I've done a lot of different parts, but my buddy, what was that movie? The old guys jump on a motorcycle and start riding and got in all kind of trouble. I've got a guy, my roommate in college, and we've talked about it. He likes to ride, and I ride. He says, as soon as I get, his name's Joe also. I says, can you see two old Joes riding motorcycles across the United States of America? We're going to go one route down, over, and one route back. And he says, I bet we don't make it all the way back. We'll stop and have the bike shipped back and get a plane. So we're going to check this one out. I'm ready to go.
Excellent. Describe Detroit in one word.
Oh, I get two. Motown cars. Music and
Fair enough.
cars.
Fair enough. What profession other than your current one would you like to try?
A car dealer. I'd have been a good car
wow.
dealership. I love it. And that's what, guys, I'm so sorry about the electric. If it don't make noise, I don't like it. If it makes noise, put me in the driver's seat. I like it. I'm just old-fashioned.
Since we're on cars, what was your first car?
1964 Corvette Stingray.
Ah, nice.
I still have a Corvette. I've always had a Corvette.
Excellent. And this will be the last question. What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
To my 25-year-old son and all the Gen Zs, you have a mouth and ears. Use them both proportionately. 1 and 2. Remember that, 1 and 2. Use them proportionately.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Senator Manchin, I love you.
Thank you.
Well-deserved ovation, standing ovation, Senator. Thank you for your service to our country. Thanks for choosing the Detroit Economic Club. Roop and Tarek, thanks for your important roles today and your ongoing DEC support. Ladies and gentlemen, tell your friends and colleagues to join the Detroit Economic Club on time, every time. This meeting of the DEC is now adjourned. Thank you.